When Gears Tactics came out in 2020, I actually had no idea it even came out. It had come out just less than a year after Gears 5 came out, smack dab in the middle of COVID. And gaming was booming at that time, so you'd think it would have rode that gaming hype train back then, but I honestly don't remember hearing a single thing about this game, to be completely honest. It had came out right after COVID began, and I was still in school. Not only that, but it also only released on PC, and I didn't have one yet. But I was a lot more concerned with life, school, and toilet paper at that time. I remember seeing it come up on Game Pass around wintertime later that year, seeing the cover and going, huh, that's great, and ignoring it entirely. I hadn't heard anything about it, seen not a lick of content for it, and was just so disappointed in Gears 5 that I just exited from the franchise as a whole for a good while until I started making these videos a couple years later. It was only then that I started to realize that this was a prequel game. Before that, I had zero clue what this game was about, and before then, I didn't care. But now, after finishing this game twice now, I kinda wish I had played it sooner, even if I have some issues with it. The graphics are really clean, the gameplay is very captivating, and the story, well, the story is okay. I mean, it's a Gears game, so you know how that goes, and it was also a prequel. And with prequels, there will always be a few challenges to face with the story, its characters, and the time period within that respective world as to avoid inconsistencies in the timeline. The story, for one, needs to be interesting considering we probably will know what will occur towards the end of the game. Judgment and Tactics do this well because the premises are interesting enough, as they also follow storylines that we haven't been exposed to within the main games. Then the characters need to be interesting and not to be redundant with reoccurring arcs. Judgment didn't do as well with Baird at the ending, not matching or aligning how he is at the start of Gears 1, but Paddock, Loomis, and almost Sophia were interesting enough. You would think Gears Tactics would be better with his characters, as it doesn't need to worry about redundant arcs for characters, as everyone is new here. Well, almost everyone. And lastly, the most important one for immersion and interest in the story as a whole, the timeline. The timeline clearly should not have technology from the current titles, nor should it have things that just haven't been discovered yet either, at least without explanations for their occurrence. Both Tactics and Judgment have these problems in varying degree, like Judgment having Lancers despite them not being made yet, and Karn having Diggers with a D, even though we don't see those get used until Gears 3. While Tactics kinda has an excuse it could use, for example, these guys are off the grid, so their discovery of the Kansas isn't that big of an issue because I mean, who would they tell? It's interesting Tactics manages to fall into these issues in the first place, despite the game taking place in a sort of segregated section in the background stories of Gears of War. The story for Gears Tactics is an interesting one. Another thing with prequels is that you want the story to give context to the surrounding story, or at least connect it within the current story in some way or another. The problem with Gears Tactics is that it feels like a completely separated story with little to no impact until literally the last couple missions. And you would think this would be their advantage here. The Gears of War games have always seemed more focused on gameplay rather than the story, but this game might be the worst offender of such a trend. The story itself isn't bad, it has some interesting moments, but it's just extremely quick. The story takes place just about a year after E-Day, actually starting on the day the hammer strikes occurred. You focus on Gabe Diaz, who recently demoted himself, who was tasked by Prescott to eliminate some guy named Ukon, a locust scientist. Gabe needs to go recruit people, stranded and COG alike, for the assassination while tracking him down. They run into him a couple times with some mishaps, but eventually after 3 times, they manage to kill him. That's really it. There's only 2 main things that happen in between the start and end of what I just told you, and it barely matters in the overall story. The truth we learned from Sid, and finding a certain character that we'll get to further in the video. These new characters themselves also aren't as interesting as I had hoped. This probably is just a result of the story being extremely short, but there's many missions and a decent amount of cutscenes where these characters talk, so you'd expect that there'd be some sort of development or at least some interesting dialogue between these main characters, but you won't be finding that here. Chances are you'll get through this entire game and not care for a single person. Genuinely, I cannot care any less for any of the main 4 characters, especially since one of those 4 comes in at the tail end of the game. Each of them have nothing to offer to the story, except for maybe Sid. If you swapped out their characters with others and put the same weapons in their hands and same exact dialogue, it wouldn't make much of a difference. That's how bland each of these characters are in this game, and that was really disappointing to see. I was looking forward to this game after beating Gears 5, because the gameplay looked interesting, as before I wasn't ever into turn-based games until recently playing Baldur's Gate 3, but I was also really intrigued by the story. It's a prequel that centers on Kate's father. That's gotta be pretty interesting, right? Well, it turns out Gabe could have been literally anyone else and the story would be the exact same. That's how little his existence mattered to me, because he's as stale as a saltine cracker, and it's saddening. Now, with that all being said, the gameplay side of things isn't that bad. I honestly would recommend anyone that's a fan of turn-based games or Gears of War to try it out. There is a lot of fun to be had that this game offers. Now again, keep in mind I've only played Baldur's Gate 3 out of all existing turn-based games, so my knowledge on these types of games is a little limited, but I have to say I enjoyed my experience. Mostly. Because there's just so many things in this game that drive my frustration so high that sometimes I wonder if I should continue playing or just uninstall. Let me fully explain what I mean. So I figured it'd be better to talk about the story first this time around, seeing how it's just really short. There isn't really even much to critique here, as there's not that much that happens. So little, in fact, that it would be quicker to give a summary on what happened than it would be to brush your own damn teeth. So let's see. Start that timer. Set just 1 year after E-Day, roughly 13 years before the start of Marcus's journey in Gears of War 1, Gabe Diaz, a former disgruntled high-ranking officer who demoted himself to escape the bullshit of Chairman Prescott, gets called in, sort of, against his better judgment and will, for a dangerous mission of eliminating a high-priority target named Ukon, and has some old dude that looks a little too similar to Conquest to help. After escaping the city from hammer strikes, they need to recruit more soldiers for this task, as Gabe's crew got wiped out within the first few hours when he was gone. They go looking for equipment and recruits for the cause, eventually come across some people with hatred for the COG, no surprise there, and convince them to help as they also want to kill Ukon, and for some reason know exactly where they are. So Michaela's added. They fail in killing him the first time. Guess these guys didn't know it was only Act 1. Well, they find him again and fail yet again, because oh shit, Conquest, the shady looking guy, turns out to actually be shady. Ukon manages to get away, and Michaela hits the man so hard he might not wake up again, because god damn. Then they put him in timeout. He refuses to talk. Prescott says to kill him and move on. That's not weird at all. Then Conquest tells us the truth, what we learned from Gears 5 since he was working there as a guard. He wanted to take Ukon to show to the world that the COG was responsible for everything happening to them, but wanted to do it alone and not risk Gabe and Michaela's safety. Gabe decides then to tell Pops what he learned at school that day for whatever reason, and Prescott sends over a squad to arrest Conquest. Yeah, that seems about right. They then assume that Prescott assumes that they're dead now, which is just, like, I know he offset the coordinates, but Prescott could have just moved the laser around a bit to make sure he really got them, but whatever, there's too many things to think about here. We're gonna move on. Then they find Ukon again, and then end the game. Oh right, yeah, forgot to mention, they found Reyna. Yes, that Reyna. Yeah, she was just another captive in a very special spot. In case you couldn't tell she was special, Gabe speaks to her in a real soft and different voice than the other captives that they've rescued all game. And she's just as abrasive as her daughter, and again, like mother like daughter, she also shoots the only son of a bitch that can speak. You don't want any information? Just forget your dad and anything that came before. I swear to God, I cannot with this Diaz family, man. Yeah, that was less than 2 minutes. Are you done brushing your teeth yet? I bet not. Go ahead, get them clean. I can wait. Alright, thanks. Can smell that shit from here. Woo! So this might actually be the quickest story I've ever consumed in a video game and not feel a single thing for any of the characters. Gabe, who if you haven't realized by now is obviously supposed to be Kate's dad with the Diaz surname and subsequently finding Reyna Torres. Gabe starts as this guy in a motor pool as a mechanic as he recently demoted himself from lieutenant to sergeant because he could no longer take place in Prescott's war. He's then ordered by Prescott to go to the CIC in the city with this Sid Redburn guy to obtain some classified files. These files contain information about the Locust scientist named Ukon responsible for the Corpsers, Brumax, and other huge monsters of the Locust Horde. Gabe doesn't question why intel on a Locust scientist might have been classified in the first place, and he doesn't care. He just wants to finish it so he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He has Sid's help here and any other recruits that they find along the way. He then meets Michaela very early on and convinces her to join and train the other soldier recruits. He then locks up Sid for his transgressions, foolishly tells Prescott something close to their location even though he sorta knew what was up, then meets Reyna, and that's that. He doesn't really display any qualities other than just being a decent leader. Don't know anything about him. What mission was it that made him demote himself? Why Prescott maybe couldn't be trusted? Or why he even cared to continue fighting back if he didn't like Prescott in the first place? And his own motor crew died hours after leaving them alone. I know nothing about this guy, and that sucks because I was hoping to see something cool that would show us how Kate came to be, maybe similar qualities or tendencies, but nah. I mean, Kate doesn't really have much going for her either. Maybe it runs in the family. Next there's Sid Redburn, a veteran gear who helps Gabe in the quest for capturing Ukon. He's honestly just kind of an ass. He starts coming around a little bit in Act 2, helping recruits in Michaela's camp, but then he pulls this shit. Once meeting his consequences and getting put in a dog cage, he plays the silent game for a while. Then after just one mission, Gabe questions him, not even threatening him or offering anything to him. Basically just says pretty please with the cherry on top, and he just quickly spills all the beans. So it turns out Sid was at New Hope when Niles was conducting those experiments on the children, and Ukon was one of those children. Sid snitched on the whole place, someone he knew, it went up the chain, and then of course it was all shut down by the chairman, and then Sid never heard from any of the other soldiers that he served with ever again, and just continued in Pendulum Wars as he was. However, he does feel horrible for his actions, even trying to apologize to these two, yet they fall asleep, and it was an enjoyable scene. Sid's the only one to have any meaningful change throughout the story, and he wasn't even a bad person, just a dude that just wanted to do his job and witnessed honestly the biggest cover-up in their entire history, and just wanted to do something about it. I'm actually more surprised Gabe, or hell, especially Michaela, didn't even consider Sid's idea for parading Ukon throughout the streets of Ephyra. They'd probably be stopped and shot, and and there would be another cover up or something, but Gabe hates the top brass of the COG and Michaela hates them all, and they just end the game like, yeah, there's nothing to do but survive at this point. The same sort of weird, loose, and maybe lazy conclusion Del and Kate come to after discovering the same secret 40, 50 years later. Like, maybe there isn't anything to do but try and end it, because I really don't know what it would accomplish. But these four jackasses don't even care, because they're like, what's done is done. And as for Kate knowing, I suppose we haven't seen Gear 6 yet. I'm not saying they need to tell the world, but I'd appreciate a conversation surrounding the matter and how they feel about it, rather than leaving it at, yeah, we'll just let them fight their own wars. Then there's Michaela Dorn. There's absolutely nothing to say about her, like genuinely not an ounce of character development for her, which isn't fair since it's such a short campaign, but the only thing she has is hatred for the COG. I was hoping she would have some sort of connection to the main Gears titles or Gears 5, but nah, she was just a stranded that used to be an engineer that's also good with a sniper. Nothing else about her. Tell you one thing though, she really loves tossing the F word around. Fascist. What word do you think I meant? Gears is a little too woke of a game for that. Come on now. It actually gets annoying after the, I don't know, 7th time she says it.
Listen, fascist. You lost fascists.
See, Reyna, this is how fascists celebrate.
Get any answers from your tyrant, buddy? Fascists can fight. I'll give you that.
Thanks. It's the first thing we learn in fascist school.
Oh, so you think it's funny the shit the COG does? Burning the world down.
No, just don't judge us too quickly by the uniform we wear. All right?
Like, both Gabe and Sid here agree with you. They don't even like the COG. She's just insufferable for the majority of the game. Gabe even says we're not all like that, and she doesn't even let up on it. Like, good lord, we don't even know what affected her. Yes, it's the hammer strikes, but she's acting like they're the only ones that were affected by what's going on. And this is what I meant in relation to Gabe as well. I feel for Sid because he told us what made him hate the COG, but neither Gabe or Michaela gave us more context other than the surface level things they state. She just says the COG took everything from them. What does that entail? People, maybe family, friends, just a little, only a tiny bit of context wouldn't hurt for characterizing these people. Like Gabe, what mission was it? What did he have to do? Did he need to cover up something? Make me feel something for these characters. And I swear to God, if someone goes in my comment section on some, oh, what's in the books, I'm gonna find out where you live. It's not hard to throw a little context in the game's narrative. There's also a scene where she gets really snappy with Gabe for asking if she can make the grenade.
So, these gas grenades. You think you can make them do what we need?
Are you? I have 2 engineering doctorates. You think I'm gonna have trouble making a little gas pop out?
No, Great. Excellent. Let's head back.
Can I build a damn gas grenade?
It's like, he doesn't know you. He doesn't know your capabilities. It's a fine question to ask. Like, I don't know why she's so upset. Then finally, there was Reyna Torres. We find her very late in the game, literally a couple chapters before ending the game, and she helps us find Ukon for the 3rd time. She apparently has always been on a run from the COG with her father, who taught her how to fight and take care of herself. Her father was then eventually murdered by Ukon, yet Ukon left her alive for reasons she doesn't know yet. She was then captured, and Ukon took the pendant away. Later on, she escaped and then got recaptured and then put in a torture pod and narrowly escaped with Gabe's crew. Kate said her grandfather wasn't a good person, meaning Reyna's dad, right? So the scientist that broke Reyna out, raised her himself, taught her how to survive, and who Reyna doesn't seem to hold any resentment towards, that grandfather? I mean, maybe she means bad in the sense that she realized he played a hand in bringing the Locust to fruition, but Reyna never learns what happened at Kadar within this game. It's assumed she learns this off screen. Why couldn't we have seen her learn this in the game? And that would be a better connection between this game and 5 about Reyna's past. So besides the background that we mostly knew about just without the Ukon part, she also has 0 personality in this game. Gee, that's 3 Gears games where I've got not an ounce of feeling for this character. Wow. Doesn't help that we save her just 2 missions away from the final mission of the game, so she's only here in the campaign for a solid 3 hours of gameplay. I'm not counting the veteran missions after the game, because obviously nothing happens past that point. Also, not to mention, she looks awful. Like, seriously, why does she look like this? Did the art team even know that Gears 4 was out? Her eyes, nose, and lips are all bigger. Like, come on, man. At least Prescott looks more like a younger version of himself, and her model just looks horrible in general. When you put her next to Gabe, it's obvious she was such an afterthought in design. I mean, look at her. Her hair looks like this, and Gabe's, Sid, and Michaela's look like this. I mean, just wow. And this right here, the same, oh, I don't know what this amulet is or means. You mean to tell me she survived the entire Locust War from this point on, then passed it on to Kate without ever trying to find out what the other side of this amulet meant? I'm not sure when the Locust started using the insignia on the other side, but I mean, she's in Gears 4, so she saw it at some point. You mean to tell me she went roughly 40 years without ever trying to figure out the truth? I know you can't really trust a COG or anything like that, but I'm surprised she didn't try and search for anything herself. Maybe she knew it was a heavily guarded secret. I just don't know why she didn't ever think that it had something to do with her. Like the only locust that could speak, kept you alive, and killed your dad, who was also a scientist. Then you have a pendant from your father that bears the same insignia those locusts had. Maybe it makes sense why she distrusts the Cogs so much in 4, not including how horribly they treat the outsiders. One of these 3 certainly told her about what happened with the Cog, but if so, that means she knew the truth, and possibly even knew that she was the daughter of Mira as well, especially after Mira dies in 3. You mean to tell me she didn't have any of those similar headaches like Kate had throughout her entire life?
The voice acting's okay in this game. It kind of sucks because they have separate voice actors for returning characters like Prescott and Reyna.
Both Prescott and Reyna's voice actors still sound decent for their respective roles. It's just disappointing that they weren't the same. At least Sid's voice actor is the same that voiced Loomis in Judgment. He did a good job here.
Something that does annoy me with the story is that sometimes at the end of missions they'll have dialogue where they're speaking as they jump into the APC. So you've got the Mission Complete song playing over some story dialogue, and it's just annoying as hell because you can barely hear it sometimes.
Gotta admit, felt good to mess with that asshole instead of running. Now, I got one more place where we might find him.
Other than the laziness or being rushed, I don't get why they didn't have all the story ones with dialogue at the end operate like this first mission where it lets Gabe talk before the end completion screen begins.
We got a big mission ahead. And a lot of manpower left to find.
That way some people wouldn't feel the need to have captions on. I just like them, but I'm sure some people like to have them off.
The dialogue can also get really corny, like this one bit towards the end of the game where Michaela's talking to Reyna. Like, I don't know, there's a decent amount of voice lines that make me cringe a little bit.
And, good work, everyone. Listen to Reyna, people. She'll be giving the orders before long. Now let's get back. Fuel economy is gonna take a hit, but our HQ vehicle's about to become an armored...
Like, what do you mean she's going to be making orders? She hasn't done a single thing to exemplify her being a leader besides saying good job and telling them where to go. Like, damn, they doing the same thing to her they did to her daughter. Just give her a leadership position for shits and giggles, I suppose. Like I said at the beginning of the video, a prequel should give background context to existing characters or concepts in the main titles. Otherwise, it's just a standalone and would need to exemplify the new characters to really grab the viewer's attention. Reyna is the only character from the main game we have, and it would have done so much for Gears 4 and 5 if we got any building of her character from this game. But again, she's thrown in at the last second, so we learned nothing new about her. We already learned in Gears 5 that Mira's baby daddy took her away and raised her, but we have no context on why Kate says Reyna said he wasn't a good man. If anything, she seems so vengeful for him. Doesn't seem like she didn't like him. I guess we do have insight to maybe why she would distrust the Cog so much if we assume she knows the truth of the Locust. It's just insane to me that this isn't hinted at in the slightest in 4 nor 5, nor did she learn this on screen. It would have been really impactful if Gabe or Sid told her the origins of the Locust and she were to develop a deep hatred of the Cog along with them, but this doesn't happen. Maybe because no one here really knows who she is yet, and they wouldn't just tell anyone the origins of the Locust, but Gabe marries her later on, so I mean, he could have just told his wife this information at some point, right? I feel like we could have tied up some missing pieces or answered a couple things, but no. And I don't know why Gabe was just so lackluster. The father of the main character of a main title in a Gears game, and I guess the late husband of now the Swarm Queen, and we got no characterization for him. Just really disappointing. Ukon's known to have been responsible for the monsters we see like Brumox, Corpsers, I think Reavers. It's cool information to have. This does at least provide some background context of the beast that we see in the main games, and I also like that we saw him throughout the game more. We get to know him a little bit better too. The dude is a talker, that's for sure. I guess all in all, the story wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either.
It's a good vehicle for the gameplay, so let's talk about it. The gameplay for Gears Tactics is the first like itself ever in the Gears franchise. And before playing Baldur's Gate 3, I thought a turn-based game for Gears wouldn't make any sense. The same way I thought about Halo Wars when I tried it on one of those GameStop consoles in the store. Remember when we had those? You could play a whole demo of Injustice in a GameStop if you wanted to. I remember getting my ass beat by Ares over and over again, so it made me buy the game just to beat his ass myself. They don't have those anymore, do they? I can't remember the last time I was even inside of a GameStop, and that's already sad itself. Anyways, I was very skeptical of a turn-based Gears of War game, but this was before I realized how these games actually work, so I was pretty ignorant on these types of games since I typically avoided them. But now, especially after playing for an obscene amount of hours, I'm surprised they haven't tried this style of game for this franchise sooner. The turn-based style works so well for a franchise like Gears of War, where the premise has always been about strategic positioning in a gunfight. Each level, well, most of them, is designed with varying points of cover and flanking routes to allow the player some strategic decision making in their gameplay. Those options being open to the player made the game so fun for its campaigns. decisions. And now with Gears Tactics, it's further emphasizing that aspect of decision making in its gameplay. And it fits so well for Gears of War in general because of everything I just said. It uses that cover-based gameplay to its advantage and becomes the main feature in Tactics, making it such an amazing integration for Gears of War. All the guns feel and function as they would in the regular games, and the mechanics each feel ripped straight from the main titles that all fit so well that Gears Tactics feels like it could be the main style of the Gears games. All of the aspects of Gears that you could think of are in this game and work phenomenally to make for a fun and engaging experience.
Honestly, this game requires more brain power than just playing a Gears campaign. You really could bulldoze your way through most, if not all, encounters in every single Gears campaign, no matter the difficulty. I think with the exception of a couple segments on Insane and Inconceivable, but I first played this game on normal, and good lord, this positioning matters so much. You can't just waltz in and start shooting. You will suffer learning to play this game, and I love that. You really need to position well, manage your actions, abilities, and units well, and be very aware of what enemies are out at the time. The maps will get very redundant, but the layouts really do offer a lot of options for advancing any mission that make most missions very engaging, and when you level up, very hard to put down.
The first mission serves as your tutorial. It serves its purpose, yet leaves out some information that could be pretty useful to the player that we'll touch on later, but some of these are best found out by the player itself, like using Overwatch correctly. So each individual unit or character has 3 action points, or AP. Movement will take an action point with certain distance, and shooting as well as reloading each cost an action point. Distance is roughly the same for each unit, but to allow the player just a few more meters in movement when wanting to move to a piece of cover, there's times where normally you'd run out of distance, but if there's cover and you get close enough, you can just slide into cover. Just like how we've always known it to work, which is really sick. Each unit will have their own set of abilities, but everyone comes with 2 weapons. Whatever their class is dictates their main weapon, and everybody will have a snub. There is no Boltok in the game, which is so sad, but makes sense as it's a Locust weapon, and the COG were prohibited from using them initially. Although none of the Locusts use Boltoks in this game either, which was weird, but I guess they couldn't find a way to make it fit. When you get ready to shoot an enemy, it'll tell you all you need to know before pulling the trigger. If you hit the TACCOM, it'll give you your chance of hitting, depending on distance from the target, which gun you're using in its effective range, obstructions in the environment like cover, walls, and such, and any additional buffs like Wretches having a permanent 20% evasion buff. These will all factor into the final percentage you'll see here at the top. Now, I've already learned that having a decent percentage chance still means that you can miss, just like Shadowheart. However, I didn't think it would be so disheartening at times. Like, I failed 80% chances and above many times, even 95%. I know, 80% means you have a 1 in 5 chance to miss, but like, come on man, don't piss me off with math. I love math, but this game finds a way to annoy the hell out of me with it.
The hell?
Each time you shoot will also have a chance to add critical damage as well, which is normally an additional 100% damage or just double your original damage. There's also a chance for partially hitting the enemy, which I'm not even sure how that works. They don't tell you the percentages for that, just sometimes you'll barely scratch the enemy. Every unit is able to commence Overwatch, which will put that unit in a state ready to shoot anything that comes in its line of sight. Enemy Locusts will use this as their main bread and butter, to the point of annoyance even. The way to stop an Overwatch is to use the disabling shot on the pistol. It does need to hit, however, to disable and disrupt them. Each of your units will also come with a grenade except for supports. They're the healers of the group. Well, if you decide to class them that way. So there's 5 classes: supports with a lancer and a healing grenade, vanguards with a retro lancer, heavies have a mulcher, and snipers have, and scouts with a Nasher. You could also switch out that healing grenade with a regular grenade if you really wanted to for the support, which most time I did. The healing grenade was not that useful, but we'll discuss that later. Each class has a pretty spread out skill tree with 4 paths that they can invest into. You can be a chainsaw maniac that consistently heals your team, or just really grenade happy as a heavy or a scout, even with proximity mines. You can also chain 6 to 10 shots in a row as a sniper, with at least half of them as crits if you have good enough positioning and master your cooldowns and resource management.
Or you could class it to the point of playing 1 shot, 1 kill for the majority of the time. The sniper was honestly, to me, the strongest in the game next to the scout. It's insane the amount of damage they just shit out.
The combinations you can do with each other can get really crazy as well. What kinda sucks with the game is the leveling up. The pace you level up at is just so uneven. Like I mentioned, there's 3 acts within the game, with some side missions to complete in between some of the chapters. By the end of Act 1, you'll most likely be around level 4, but by the time you reach the last boss of the game, you'll be roughly level 6, maybe level 7 if you really use one character the most. So for Act 1, you level up 4 times, which had my dopamine on a high, getting excited about what abilities I'm going to upgrade next. But between Acts 2 and 3, you level up twice. There's more than 2 times as many missions, and yet you only upgrade twice. You feel it so hard in between missions when you finish and you see that your XP bar has barely moved after a mission that probably took you like 30 minutes. Act 2 felt like I was making no progress despite having to slog through so many boring missions because the story gets to a standstill in the middle of it. You rescue a few people, then you do a bunch of missions until you get to the boss at the end of the act. But up until that point, you're doing roughly the same kind of missions on slightly different maps. And don't get me wrong, the gameplay is very engaging, but I have limits, and Act 2 was pushing mine. The pacing just felt like it slowed to nearly a halt, and it made it a little hard to want to get through if I had nothing to look forward to other than computing multivariable calculus to beat the next mission. It didn't help that the game doesn't tell you how to level up either. And it's kills, by the way. I only learned this from searching this. Otherwise, I would never have known. And apparently doing executions, which are really cool and look sick, does not give you XP, meaning it's only beneficial for giving your allies an extra action point, which is a little stupid because to execute an enemy, you normally have to go out of your way to do it. Why not tell people how to level up, and on top of that, why make one of the most useful mechanics in the game not give XP when it's already so damn scarce past Act 1? If you use Gabe or any support, they will naturally be behind the other characters like Sid as a vanguard, because the whole point of supports is literally just that, supporting. Giving teammates extra action points or healing them, as most of the support abilities don't translate to kills or just translate to assists. And since I can't see the XP bar mid-game, or at least little pop-ups of how much XP you earn just like in Baldur's Gate, I can't tell whether or not he gets XP from assists. So if you want Gabe leveled up by the end of the game, you'll need to be creative in letting him kill enemies off, like using your chainsaw frequently, which isn't overtly difficult to do. It's even encouraged with some of the ability upgrades in the support skill tree, but it's still a pain to deal with, as obviously not every enemy can be chainsawed through.
There is a perk that makes chainsaw kills count as an execution, as it will give your units an extra action point afterwards. So will it count as an execution XP wise as well? I have no idea.
There's also missions where the challenge is to deploy only one character, and most of the time it's a scout to deploy. Why would I choose to bring one person for a mission, not get any XP for any of my main hero units unless I need to recruit some more people? It's more so a waste of my time, and I'm not stressing about grabbing more equipment.
Speaking of missions,
there are main missions and side missions. Tactics has just 5 mission types, and you'll go through each of these types in the story. Each mission will see you deployed with the APC and will have you return to the APC to leave sometimes. Sometimes you'll just deploy in without it and leave without it on foot, but it's always in the background before starting missions and in the completion screen as well. First introduced to you are the rescue missions. These only allow you to take 2 units with you, with some later on only letting 1 go, as it's normally 4 for regular missions. You need to rescue some other units from torture pods that will kill both of them inside within 15 turns, forcing you to move quickly and really manage your abilities and cooldowns, as there will be enemies protecting those pods and there will be some that spawn in. You'll rescue them and they can be recruited after the mission ends by reaching the extraction point. The next are sabotage missions. This is literally go in, clear out enemies, then destroy whatever the objective is at the time. Emulsion tanks, some supplies, whatever. Then after destroying those, you'll need to extract to the end of the mission as well. Next are incursions, which are nearly the same as sabotage missions, but with a bridge to raise in the middle of the mission,
or a gate to open in the middle, and you just need to eliminate everyone. That's about it.
Not much else other than the map's design, really. Then there's scavenger runs. There will be a nemesis bombardment encroaching on your heals every turn while you need to be collecting equipment cases. These will be scattered in every mission you play, at least 3 of them, but it's the main focus of these kinds of missions. You'll need to collect 3, but you can collect up to 5 if you're able to before eventually reaching the extraction point at the end. These missions were always funny because the APC they use is on the other side of the map past all the cases, and you start on the opposite side to collect the cases. How did they end up over here without picking up any cases if the APC is on the other side over there? Did they get out, walk around, and oh shit, nemesis are coming, let's finally do what we came to do and run back to the vehicle where we came from? Just a weird look, takes me out every time I play these missions. Anyways, then lastly there's control. Probably the most intense mission outside of the bosses. You'll need to collect supplies from each control point by having at least 1 gear standing inside the circle. If you're not, or an enemy stands there with you, then you don't get a supply. If it's only the locust in there, then they get a supply for that round. You need 10 supplies to win, and the locusts only need 5. They send massive waves at you that can wipe your team in a round or 2 if you're not careful enough. These also perplex me because when you reach 10 supplies, the mission just gives you the completion. There's no extraction point, you just all get out safely. Even if you were balls deep in locusts, they end up just walking out like it was nothing. I also love how every end of the mission is them escaping being shot at with sometimes nobody there, even when there's enemies just standing like right in front of it. Because it's an in-game cutscene, they're all all just standing there and the bullets are coming from God. It's just jarring. Each mission will also have a second optional objective attached and sometimes a condition as well, and being able to fulfill the second optional objective will give you more equipment cases. Some are like don't take any damage, or no one can go down, or get 8 kills in 1 turn, or don't take a sniper, or bring a sniper. Some of the conditions or modifiers, I think they're called in this game, can really make it annoying, however, like not being able to use grenades, or enemies are immune to disabling shots. One mainly being the last scavenger run giving you only 2 action points instead of 3 per round. Why they put this modifier on the mission type where your action points matter the most is beyond my comprehension, so much that I just quit. And what you need to know about me is that normally I will not quit a game when it's beating my ass. Generally speaking. Even if I'm getting rocked, I will keep eating those losses until I eventually win. However, I only have so much time in my day to put up with bullshit, and this mission alone was just too infuriating to deal with. So to preface, if your unit dies in this game, they stay dead. There's no revive scroll, they die. They're done. Apparently, this is how it works in XCOM, a game I've seen recommended many times since playing this game, but I didn't know this was in Tactics. I just usually keep my units alive, and anytime I did die, it was with a main unit, and that's never allowed because they're story dependent, duh. And the only character I've had die is my main scout, Marcella. But because she was my favorite unit, anytime she died, I just reloaded anyways because I was scared I wouldn't be able to get her back before I learned that they actually do die forever. And she actually does end up dying later on from something really stupid that I'll certainly get to later. So when I got to this mission and spent hours in what felt like the 8th circle of hell trying to get past just the first fight, I just stopped. I went back to the main menu, swapped out my units with some low-level units I never used or care about, and sent them in the mission to die so I could progress the game. Keep in mind, this was a side mission, not a main one, meaning all 4 of these were optional. Not only were they optional to complete, it was also right before the final boss of the game. I was feeling burnt out at the end of Act 2 from not leveling up at all until Act 3, and then just never leveling up after that. And I knew that the following mission was the last, so I just really wanted to see the end of the game. I didn't care for a couple extra loot. I felt good enough to beat the game already. I wasn't going to level up either, so what the hell would I have gained besides an aneurysm? This game lets you fail side missions to progress, so that's exactly what I did. I threw my lowest level units into the fire and let them die so I could end the game as soon as possible because I wasn't putting up with that. I know I probably could have done some math to put a team of supports and scouts together to get through this mission, but it would have just been so annoying to pull off, and it wouldn't have mattered in the long run because you can only take characters on one side mission at a time. Right, so Act 1 will give you 2 side missions to choose from while only needing 1 to proceed. Act 2 will give 3, needing only 2 to proceed, and Act 3 will give 4, needing 3 to proceed. You cannot do all side missions as the game fails to inform you. I thought you just needed to complete the required amount, then you could still choose to do the other or move on if you wish, but no, you have to choose which ones you'll complete to progress the story forward. When you send units on a mission and they complete it the proper way, then you need to complete the next side missions. Those units you took before will be classified as traveling and can't be used until you complete the other side missions and progress. At first I wanted to do all side missions and experiment with other recruited units as they'll be recruited at a certain level and already have skill points allotted, or just make different sets of teams for handling different missions. I didn't think it would be as important to level up my main units till I got to Act 2's boss and further on Act 3's boss. For the main story missions, you can only bring the main characters, which of course makes sense, but you'd usually have 1 spot open to bring an extra unit, where Marcella would usually go my first playthrough. But by Act 3, you get another main character, Reyna, filling up that last spot. So if you're leveling up a specific unit, well guess what, you can't use them in a final boss because someone else needs to be there and steal the spot, making the heavy class mainly usable for missions only outside the story, or just the bosses in general, which I would really love to have the chance to use a heavy in this last boss fight. So yeah, once I realized that I didn't need the extra units, I just sent them to their deaths. Their country thanks them. So there are those equipment cases I mentioned scattered throughout the game's missions. Equipment is all armor pieces or weapon attachments that give you buffs and maybe some minor debuffs like getting 40% more damage a shot, but you have 1 less bullet in a chamber for, say, a sniper. There's very little attachments for the sub, and there aren't many helmets until Act 2, and even then I wish there were more. I did like how much you could customize your character though. I was surprised at the amount of customization options there were. And these are visible in combat as well as cutscenes, which is a nice touch. This is why I liked Marcella. I had some lore going on for her and everything. Same thing with my man Gang. He had a whole redemption arc and everything. He was slightly racist. And I'd customize their hairstyles, color of their armor. I had a lot of fun with the customization. I do think there could be a lot more options here, like more helmets or maybe just more colors to add here, but it was pretty decent for what it was. Maybe some more hats as well. Still a lot of fun to be had. So let's talk about the enemies. There's drones, wretches, grenadiers, tickers, snipers, Kantus, boomers, Theron guards, disciples, and zealots. Drones will love to overwatch you constantly. It's their bread and butter. They can't see you, they'll walk up, overwatch. Wretches will swarm in numbers and smack the dog dog shit out of you. Normally in groups, toss them a bone and your problems are gone. Grenadiers will genuinely run up and blast you like it's a game of King of the Hill. Should they take damage before their turn, they'll lose their opportunity attack, which lets them shoot you if you move too close to them, and then they'll gain 50% movement and 50% damage buffs. They're essentially going to turn into a juggernaut, which means they'll be able to run all the way up to one of your units and blast them in the face. So you're going to want to get rid of that opportunity attack and then chainsaw or retro charge them. Tickers don't move very far, but they like to spread out, and they'll charge at you should you miss shooting at them or not fully kill them when shooting at them, and explode when they get close, but they can be kicked and then shot to explode next to other enemies, which is really useful for clearing up some problem enemies and saving you a grenade most likely. Snipers will pin you down and grant you a free lobotomy should you move an inch out of line, and will do the same if you're in Overwatch or just out in the open and it's their turn. The mark debuff that only says half movement speed. I know they said it pins you down and there's a giant laser on my forehead, but I wasn't thinking like it was an Overwatch where it'll blow your brains out for sticking your foot out, but it makes sense after learning my lesson. Don't end up like Carmine, keep your head down. Can't just give a 75% damage reduction for 2 turns. Yes, I said 75%, which he will continue to reapply until he dies. He can also res them too, like usual. Boomers will boom, but the boom shot can shoot in an arc in this game for some ungodly reason, and same thing with Theron guards. The torque bow can shoot with an arc rather than always just shooting straight forward, which always caused me some problems because you'd think, hey, he's so damn fat, he won't walk very far, but he'll walk for a mile, and slow as molasses too, because the game makes you watch the enemy movement. Then he'll shoot you from a distance you'd think you're safe from, but the boom shot just arcs over and blows you up. Getting hit by a boom shot will also apply shell shocked, which will cut your movement distance in half, if you didn't die from it first, that is. But obviously the most annoying part about this is that it shoots in an arc. It literally does not work like this in any other game. If someone has the high ground on you, you can't just shoot a boom shot in the air like you're playing softball. It shoots straight up with some drop to it. It's just really stupid. Like I said, torque bows do the same thing, but Therons have a different debuff where they let all the enemies have fun piling extra damage on you. This can also work in your favor should you kill the boomer or the Theron. You can pick up their weapon after they're gone, which is pretty cool. They will disappear in a couple turns if you don't pick them up, however. And you can shoot the same way that the boomer does as well as the Theron. The torque bow has 2 options, the high powered and the low powered. The high powered would be the exact same, and the low powered would be just a higher damaging grenade launcher, which is really boring even if it is really useful. And lastly, we have disciples and zealots that release gas upon death that give you a 75% damage reduction for 2 turns should you be standing in it, and their allies a 75% damage increase for 2 turns if they stand in it. However, zealots when close enough will screech, removing you from cover and fully disabling your entire kit except for movement and shooting. On a first playthrough, most of these guys will feel very overpowered, mainly the grenadiers, boomers, and Therons, but after playing for many hours, you really just need to work on positioning and you'll mostly be fine. Even if you're underleveled, you can get through mostly anything the game throws at you. Really conquering a fight from positioning well and using your cooldowns effectively feels so good. It feels like solving a complex puzzle. However, there's a small issue I have sometimes with one of the basics in a game. When in a mission, your characters will have a line of sight and radius that only extends a certain distance, commonly referred to as a fog of war, I believe, if you're familiar with these kinds of games. If something is outside this region, then you won't be able to see the enemy's movements. My main issue is when you're deploying into certain missions, you have to sort of waste a turn moving up to reveal enemies in that fog of war in order to start a fight, which gets annoying and had me restarting a few times. The enemies will get their turn for free as they're revealed, while you might have to just be standing out in the open like a slack-jawed idiot, meaning you could just lose a unit just because you had to move first. And sometimes you'll get screwed over because you can be careful moving up but not reveal anyone trying to save your action points before that they're revealed, and then they'll just reveal themselves and get to have the advantage on you when you couldn't possibly know where they were at, which is just incredibly unfair. Let's talk about the bosses. There were 3 of them. A Brumok, a Corpser, and then Ukon himself on a Hydra, just like the giant Reaver that Scourge had. Somehow the Brumok set such a high expectation that the latter 2 bosses just never seemed to breach for me. This was by far the hardest boss to fight, and yet the most fun at the same time. When you first play, unless you're used to these kinds of games, you're gonna die so many times to this guy. I died so many times to the Brumok, and it was almost as bad as these Therons in Gears 1. But once I realized what you needed to do, it's not that bad and kind of fun mapping out the movements that you need to do. Staying a certain distance from him so he won't be able to stomp you out, and destroying those guns should be a priority, as he's going to shoot with both guns each turn where they have a decent chance of hitting regardless if you're in cover or not. Then you just need to move around a bit from the rockets you'll have homing in on you per round. So stacking can help, as it'll be less rocket area that you need to avoid. Enemies will also spawn in for each phase of the fight, and there's 3 of them. Each phase is dependent on the health for his emulsion canisters on his back, and he'll turn away from you each time you shoot. So this fight has a lot of choices to make. Who's going to be shooting the canisters, who needs to just get out of the stomp range, who shoots the guns down, and who needs to mitigate the spawning enemies to make the fight move smoother. It's a lot of back and forth, and this can be a hellish experience if you don't actually think just a few moves ahead like the game
game wants you to. If you can do that, then you'll get through this boss just fine. The second boss, the Corpser, was the easiest and honestly the most boring one out of the three. All bosses have 3 phases, but this one really just had 2, and then the last phase was just shooting at a beam above it. It'll alternate between shielding itself with its legs, allowing you to take out some of the enemies and reposition to have your unit set up for the next round, as it'll open up and prepare to slam down in 2 lanes. So you'll need to shoot and potentially move out of the way. The first phase will have a few enemies at the start, and E-hole and Reaver dropped enemies. But after that first phase, enemies just never come in for the rest of the fight. At the second phase, it starts shooting proximity mines as well, but they're fairly easy to avoid. In the second and third phase, it'll start slamming down in 3 lanes rather than 2, but since there aren't any enemies spawning in anymore, it's not very difficult. After damaging it to the third phase, your team will move their attention to the beam above it, and then its health is the third phase. This boss had much less thinking needed behind it to conquer it, making it a pretty boring fight. I was excited for another cool boss after getting thrashed for a couple hours by the Brumok, but this was incredibly lackluster in comparison. The Corpser never moves and only has the slams to damage you, so the only danger you need to worry about is your positioning with the initial enemies. This fight didn't feel difficult, just tedious at first and very dissatisfying by the end of it. Because you're shooting one turn, then using the other for just repositioning unless you want to waste your grenade cooldowns on trying to open its legs. It was quicker to just wait a turn, but then it makes it so that you're always waiting every other turn, just a less intellectually engaging fight. And like the Corpser, the final boss doesn't do much better. The Hydra boss has you split off permanently from the fight with Reyna and Mikaela on one side and Gabe and Sid on the other. Enemies will spawn in waves throughout the entire fight in these side doors, while the Hydra will alternate between screaming at your platform, which will disrupt anything you're doing in between rounds, and launching missiles on the others. It forces you to mainly avoid the Hydra's attacks and focus mainly on the hordes of locusts. Each turn you'll mostly be on cleanup duty, then trying to take maybe 1 or 2 shots at the Hydra. You don't engage much with the boss at all in this fight. You avoid the area of its scream, then you avoid its missiles, and there isn't anything else to worry about. It's all about positioning yourself well with the incoming enemies and having Mikaela snipe the shit out of the bastard each round she gets the chance. So the fight is only difficult because of the literal endless sets of enemies they spawn every round on top of you, not because the boss itself is difficult, which was really disappointing again. You could even choose to get rid of the guns on the sides here that shoot the missiles, but that would be a waste of your ammo and time, as it's really easy to just dodge the radius anyway. So out of the 3, the Brumok being the first and only engaging boss was a serious letdown, but it doesn't sour the whole game for me. Playing the missions and using your unit's action skills is clearly the main focus of the gameplay loop here, so much that after beating the game, it opens up giving you veteran mode where you just do endless missions for higher tier armor and can continue leveling up your characters. Now I'm sure you're wondering, have I played this yet? I started and then got bored with it. I really wanted to see these units at the highest level you could get them to, but if it would have taken me more missions than the game even has to reach that point, then I'd rather just start the game over. And that's exactly what I did, but on insane mode this time, because my favorite pastime is raising my blood pressure to new heights from unnecessary difficulty levels. But Jack traveled from the future this time to help me out, for this new mode called Jack. Jack is his own hero, just like he is in Gears 5, with his own skill tree as well. You can spec into giving resources to your team like spawning boom shots and torque bows, act like a healer or act like a tank, or be very utility based, stopping enemy movement and whatnot, and he can even cloak mid-combat, which is probably the most useful thing in his entire kit. Not to say his kit isn't useful, it's just insane that I can use his abilities and then cloak at the end of his turn to hold a control point by himself since he counts as a hero. He makes so many issues and nuisances in this game basically disappear. Just don't forget to cloak him at the end of his turns, otherwise he'll be reduced to a box of scraps. This doesn't just instantly make insane mode easier though. Just like regular Gears of War, you're gonna die in 1 to 2 hits. It's absurd the amount of damage enemies do in this difficulty, and man was I not prepared for it. And they have higher health because of course they do, and you do the same damage because of course you do. No need for healers in this mode, like at all. Go ahead and unequip that healing grenade and put on a regular one. You'll be lucky not to die from getting shot at any point, and unless you think you can be a necromancer with these healing grenades, just go ahead and take them off. And no need for maximizing your health with health related equipment either. Adding 7 to 10% health with equipment isn't going to save you from dying. This especially goes for the classes that have healing abilities. Just go ahead and reclass your units because those are quite useless in this mode. Especially the Vanguard, because no one gets downed in this mode, you just get obliterated. Your best bet is focusing on damage output and survivability. So turns out Jack is a required unit for every mission. It means you can't skip missions in this mode. You can't just throw away 4 soldiers and call it a day. No, he needs to make it to the end every time. It doesn't mean it's impossible, however. I even had Jack as a sole survivor unintentionally because I was just too stubborn to roll back a save. And with his kit, he's able to do everything by himself as long as there's no time limit. That mission I spoke about before where you only get 2 points a turn rather than 3 for the scavenger run, Jack barely made it in this one. It felt almost impossible without at least losing a few units because with how little cover you have, the amount of enemies that spawn in and how much
much damage they do while you only get 2 moves a turn, how do you move forward, escape the incoming blast zones, and make sure you don't get shot in your ass? It feels even more unfair with Jack here because now he'll need to cloak every turn so he isn't focused on, because he'll die no matter who shoots at him, and he needs to move out of the blast zone, and he doesn't get the benefit of sliding into cover. So I said screw it and gave Jack all the action points from the supports and let everybody die grabbing the cases, and just barely got him to the extraction point.
Yeah, whoever designed this mission can just go fuck themselves. I'm just imagining Jack coming back to the camp, somehow driving the APC all by himself with nothing but 4 cog tags in the equipment, and Gabe's like, what the fuck happened? And Jack's just like, I don't know.
If someone else is beating this mission without losing at least a unit or 2, please let me know what the fuck I'm doing wrong. I'm thinking sacrificing supports for heavies with deploy to add those extra 3 points to finish it, but you'll still get shot at, so yeah, I don't know. But I also don't care to find out. It's also a little dumb that Jack needs to go for every mission, even side missions, but others are still said to be traveling. It doesn't make any sense, but Jack can already time travel, so of course he can teleport too. And then the enemies are jacked as well. Just in case you thought Jack was a free upgrade in this mode, no, everything is jacked. So they're called deviant versions of the already existing counterparts, and they'll each have another passive attached to them. The deviant wretches are given an aura to give themselves, and others extra evasion, so have fun missing even more shots on them. The deviant drones give their nearby locust buddies vampire, so healing from doing damage. Deviant Cantus are essentially zealots that can knock you out of cover. The sniper gives a debuff to the entire team, making you all easier to shoot. And then the disciples can throw poison mines that give a damage debuff of 75% like their regular counterparts give upon death. They do add a bit more variety to the pool of enemies, which is cool, but they didn't show up as often as I thought they would, which I can't say I minded much because I was having enough trouble as it was with the regular locust. There's also supposed to be supreme equipment, but I haven't seen any at all through this entire campaign. Not sure if they're in the veteran mode, but I don't really see it anywhere. Never mind, it's all the way at the end of the game in veteran mode. I guess I should have expected that. But honestly, I don't have the energy to keep playing on Insane after beating the Hydra. It was just so frustrating. It took me nearly a solid 3 hours to beat it. So anyways, the way these veteran missions go is that you get your standard optional selection of 3 out of 4 here, then you get a veteran mission at the end of it that gives you a veteran level. This doesn't give you extra XP or another level. It's purely just a status thing showing how many you've done, which means absolutely nothing to me. This game isn't multiplayer, so I mean, who's gonna know? It's also weird that I got the same mission twice for this special mission. It's a rescue mission, and I got the exact same map for rescuing back to back, which is weird. I hope I don't get that again later on, but it'll be a while before I play another 4 missions to find that out. The supreme equipment is very strong depending on your current use cases, but to me, they normally didn't beat the legendary equipment I already had or unlocked alongside the supreme equipment. Like for example, the supreme equipment for the heavy gave me healing on shots, but my heavies rarely took damage. Granted, this is insane, so I'm sure this is more useful in other modes under this. Or the supreme retro magazine, it gives 50% accuracy after getting a kill, which could be useful, but the legendary one gives me 100% crit chance after reloading, and that's much more damage overall. Or this lancer sight giving me more healing from their abilities. Healing abilities, as I've said, aren't very useful on insane, so I ignored them. But some were pretty damn good, like this mag for the lancer, or this lancer mod that I got from beating the game, because it meant Gabe now does a multiplier of 3 times his regular damage than a double when hitting a crit. I'm sure there's a lot more variations that I could experiment these new equipment with, and I'll certainly come back from time to time to try them out, because there's still even more legendary equipment to get. So there's many things in this game that just irk the hell out of me, and I gotta get this shit off my chest, because I don't know how some of this made it into the final game. So first we got the checkpoints. So to start, there is no ability to save in this game. If you're in the middle of a mission, you are allowed to quit to the main menu or the game entirely, and you'll come back to exactly where you were, but there is no save scumming in this game. Now, is save scumming really a scummy thing to do in video games? Yes, I think it somewhat takes away the organic experience of playing the game, as it could give the player too much control and advantage they get through something not necessarily designed to favor the player in that way. However, do I take part in save scumming in my games? Also yes. Save scumming is more of a non-issue. Well, I won't say non-issue, more like a convenient workaround a system not built for that purpose, especially in games like this because your gameplay is built around chance. You may have an 80% chance of success for hitting your target, but you also have a 20% chance of missing. Save scumming, if you don't know, is saving before taking that shot, missing it, and then reloading to retry it, rather than rolling with the punches of the game that's built on this chance system. The organic way of playing these games is more like when you miss a shot like that, then you adjust your game plan accordingly, not just have the chance to redo like you've got infinite time bombs from Black Ops 2. At least that's how I view it. However, there are times where this method saves you a lot of time in replaying sections of games you just don't want to spend your time doing over and over. And this is my main grievance with the Gears Tactics checkpoint system. You'll start a mission and earn a checkpoint depending on what type of mission you're on. For example, on rescue missions, you'll get a checkpoint after each unit you save. However, on control missions, the saves will occur on what feels like random rounds in between, usually about halfway done with the supply collection, but I haven't been able to tell for sure yet. Why? Because because on sabotage missions, you won't get any checkpoints. Either that, or sometimes the game would forget to give me a checkpoint in between these missions because I would make a huge mistake or get someone killed and want to reload a checkpoint to save them after being like 3 fights deep, just to find out I'd still have to restart the whole mission, forcing me to replay it all and lose roughly 20 to 30 minutes of progress, or just continue and eat my loss. Another point where save scumming isn't that bad is with experimenting with some of your units in battle. If the Gears gods decide to grant me a checkpoint at all, and I'm at a point much further on but don't remember when the last checkpoint is, I don't want to waste an action point or an ability trying out something new without being able to reload. It's scummy, and sure I could try things out on the go, but damn is it frustrating to do. Like trying to plant the grenade here next to the emergence hole because I don't want to deal with the enemies, but also don't want to use an extra action point to move over to plant because it takes a full turn to move, plant, and move again so you don't die in a blast radius. Then the last thing on checkpoints is this lovely little thing I discovered when you die with an active checkpoint. Outside of bosses, if you die or fail a mission and have an active checkpoint you can go back to, the game will give you a few options. This goes for non-story missions, so like 80% of your playtime. You'll have abort the mission, resetting your progress to before you started the mission, continue and abandon the mission, like I mentioned earlier with sacrificing my units to proceed. You'll abandon to just outright fail the mission and move on. Then you'll have reload last checkpoint and restart the entire mission. If you have a good eye, you'll see that the options here, continue and reload last checkpoint, are mapped to the same damn button. How did this make it past playtesting? Not only is this such an insane oversight, it's initially confusing as hell and can really mess your playthrough up and almost made me think I was soft locked. Imagine you're playing with a scout, say their name is Marcella, right? And you've been playing with Marcella since literally the beginning of the game, and then you decide, hey, let me send her on a control mission in the later missions of Act 3 with one of your heavies you were grooming to success. Then all of a sudden, you screw up, made a mistake, oh no issue, I'll just die and start from my checkpoint. Usually I pause the game and restart when I die, but this time I just let it play out because I went to go get a drink real quick. Without thinking or paying too much attention, I hit enter to go back to last checkpoint when I died, and it gave another prompt that I didn't pay attention to, just assuming it was asking if I wanted to go back a checkpoint, not realizing that I hit the same button mapped for continue, and that's what the game accepts as the input. Even on Xbox, or if you're using a controller on the PC, it's the same button. Who the hell let this through? How after 4 years is this still an issue? So imagine my face when loading the game and seeing both of my characters that I trained and tempered to perfection dead. And guess what? There's no save system. It's mission based, so you can't go backwards. So I had to eat that loss and lose 2 of my best units I had by that time, and this was the end of the game. I even got a mission right after that to bring a scout on the mission, and I didn't fucking have one because they just died, and there weren't any recruitable scouts at the time. And yes, I know you can swap out new recruits all the time, so it's not that important, and literally 2 missions later, I got the new scout that would be forced onto my team for the final boss fight anyway, so it didn't fully matter at the time, but I was just devastated. I had ongoing background lore from Marcella and my team, and boom, I had to write her death in the script like I'm the D&D brothers or some shit. Unbelievable that this is in the game. You just can't load your checkpoint from this menu. If you don't want to restart the whole mission or abandon the mission, you'll need to close your game and open it again to load from that checkpoint. The continue button overrides the reload one. Even on PC, clicking them individually still makes you continue. Again, how is this still in the game? It's just such a stupid inconvenience that adds frustration upon a death, where if that happens, I'm more inclined to just leave the damn game closed rather than opening it back up to play again. And then lastly, there were just some frustrations I had due to the lack of in-game knowledge, because the game fails to tell you just many things or just outright bugs that didn't make it in the analysis/rant portion, and seriously made me consider uninstalling even if I was having fun just a literal second beforehand. And we all know my luck at this point. So starting with the many things this game just doesn't key you in on. There is team damage in the game. I literally sniped a teammate that was just in line with the enemy I was aiming at. The game sometimes tells you if you're going to hit your other squad mates, but sometimes it won't. It should come up with this exclamation point here to tell you that you're about to get court-martialed. However, sometimes your shot will go wide and shoot your teammate when it didn't initially say that there was an obstruction to begin with, even if you had an 80% chance of hitting the enemy, which is just icing on the top. I love that. Like, it makes sense that a shot missing like that could have that outcome if your teammate is remotely close to the range of fire, but I just wish this was something I had learned way sooner. Lesson learned, I suppose. And honestly, it's way funnier learning it this way. In hindsight, that is. At the time, it made me want to Alt F4, but it's a funny way of teaching you a lesson because I damn sure didn't make that same mistake after that. And that's a better way of learning the game. I just get impatient having to reload a checkpoint, as I've already bitched about ad nauseum. The overwatches kind of suck because sometimes if you have a heavy or any unit that causes an enemy to fall over after getting shot, and this occurs in your overwatch, your unit will continue shooting at the enemy even though they fall into the ground. So you'll end up missing and wasting your shots of overwatch because of it, instead of them waiting until they stand back up just to shoot again. It's a weird interaction that I'm not really sure how to prevent, and will unfortunately just have to suck up losing a shot or two. Or sometimes the overwatch you set up has corners past where your gun will shoot because it opens up in a cone. So if your cone opens up in a way that the enemy can
trigger it and still not be shot. It'll still trigger the Overwatch just because it goes by when they enter the cone, not when they enter your line of sight. So you just have to think a little harder when placing these. But you can also use this to your advantage as well. Then the bugs, which there aren't too many this time around. This first one's not really a bug, just something weird. But for some reason, Sid can retrocharge the guy in cover here, but not the Grenadier out in the open because it'll hit a corner of a box. I mean, is that not almost doing the same motion? Yet in this instance, it's considered an obstruction. It's just weird. Next, my game crashed a few times, but most notably after I got killed by this bullshit Theron shot because we all love the dumb fog of war mechanic and bam, crash. There were a couple times as Jack where I shot one of those, I think it was a toxic grenade to stick on the enemies and do more damage to them. I shot it and it just disappears. This happened twice. I'd love to know where it went. It just disappears and it acts like you did shoot it, so now you have a cooldown for it. A funnier one that happens is sometimes you'll get a kill in combat. Some of your units will say something like good stuff or something like that.
Stay down.
However, they do this anytime someone dies. So one of my units will die and they'll just be like, hell yeah, soldier.
I'm impressed.
I mean, he's got good sportsmanship, I guess. Another time, a Grenadier just went berserk, but took no damage from my grenade plant. Like, okay. So after hijacking a Theron, getting him killed intentionally, I used an action to try and crawl, but after hitting the weapon indicator here, it just stopped eating my inputs as if he was mid-crawl the whole time, and it wouldn't save, nor could I do anything but quit the game. This mission had already taken me over an hour to get here, and then I had to restart from a checkpoint far back from this point. It just made me want to quit playing entirely. We know we're getting E-Day, and while we haven't seen gameplay yet, it would be crazy if the gameplay was like this, so we can assume that the gameplay will be the same as regular Gears gameplay. But what about other future Gears titles? Could we hope to see another installment of this type of Gears game? I, for one, would love to see another like this one. Despite my issues with the game, they did a good job for a new game type in this franchise. Sure, the game seems really rushed, where they could have just let it sit in the oven for a little longer, but I think this style of game fits for the Gears universe. It would be really interesting to follow a different set of characters in another time period, even within a story of Gears 4 and 5. It's possible, I think. It's a good way of adding more world building, even if the books do a good job of doing that as well. Like maybe we'd get to see Foz and JD for a few chapters, or maybe something in between the stories of the early games. They operate on negative space, or whatever it's called, as per Rod Ferguson, where they don't establish certain parts of the world, so they can essentially enter any lore as they see fit to allow for more creativity, which is pretty cool if done right. So anything is possible, really. It's why there hasn't been a map of Sarah ever given to us. They've intentionally never made a map to allow for that creativity to flow. And sure, Swarm aren't locusts, yeah, but it would be cool to see the Swarm in this format. Maybe even this format mixed with Horde a little bit is possible too. Separate classes like adding the Engineer. Not entirely sure how it could all work, I'm just tossing ideas out there, because it would be nice if this weren't their only turn-based game of Gears that they ever did. I think there's a lot of room for improvement here to get it to even be more fun than it currently is. They could tune and refine the Overwatch system a bit, they could refine the UI and the menus for sure, they can make the bosses a bit more engaging, as the Brumok was probably the best one of the three, and he was first. The Hydra wasn't really a boss, it was more waves and waves of enemies while you multitask taking a couple shots at the Hydra and avoiding its rockets, because who really used the time to shoot those missile launchers? Which I understand because this game centers mostly on fighting regular enemies, so fighting scores of locusts isn't terrible for the final fight. I just wish the Hydra was more involved like the Brumok was. The Brumok shot at you, constantly walked towards you, and could stomp you if you got too close, and shoot rockets as well, and would turn from anyone that shot his emulsion canisters, forcing you to go back and forth between units shooting him and not just unloading damage in one turn without him doing anything. You're forced to deal with his guns as there's not enough cover to get away from that consistent damage, but once you did, you didn't have to worry about being in cover anymore, and you could just focus on his walk distance to not get stomped. His fight felt much more dynamic and more demanding of the player, especially at such an early stage in the game. Like again, I gotta reiterate, this is the first boss. This fight was such a skill check for me. It was frustrating, but really rewarding once you beat it. You're forced to deal with those guns, you're forced to really spread out and prepare for incoming enemies from E-holes or drops. It was just a really intense fight and certainly rose the bar a little too high for the last couple bosses. The Corpser is certainly the weakest out of the three, because at least the Hydra has you split up, and it's not even a consistent split per playthrough, because I had Gabe and Sid in my first run together, and the second time it was Gabe and Michaela together on Insane, so that actually tripped me up and I had to play differently, so that was pretty cool. But for the Corpser fight, you just dodged some lines and fought enemies until you just need to shoot a beam above its head to really finish it off. It was more of a boring fight, and it ended ended anticlimactically. Just really undersold what I was expecting after the Brumok fight. Corpsers can move too, but all it did was sit here and stomp forward. Like, that's just boring. They also could add more depth to the classes, especially the support class. The healing is almost useless for me. Like I said earlier, I would rather prioritize getting the kill rather than healing myself. That's just a losing game, especially on Insane. Half of their kit is completely useless unless you have a team of vanguards taking damage and supports healing them from the back. And to add to that, I wish abilities for some units weren't just rendered completely useless on Insane mode. For support, you have one path, and it's the chainsaw and giving action points to your other unit's path, and it's the same with the vanguard. One path has an ability that gives you more damage for a shot depending on how much health you've lost, but you die in one shot if you don't have the buffs for your vanguard on, and even still, this feels like a complete waste compared to having Intimidate. Actually, you should just never choose any path that's not the Intimidate path for vanguard on Insane mode. The other three paths seem to be functionally useless. The Warden path's main ability is making a certain enemy focus you, and you can reduce the damage that certain enemy does by 50%, and on top of that, you can go for the badass skill, reducing damage taken by 75% for the first shot of every round. But why would you even want to use this if getting shot is your only benefit? It doesn't give any damage boost, it doesn't give you more action points like the bayonet side does. You only get the chance to shoot and gain health from what you shoot at and regenerate quicker. But even with these buffs and adding as much health as possible on your unit, which the max amount of extra health is roughly 95, so really not that big of an increase, you can still die in a couple shots to where it seems you're better off having Intimidate and giving a damage boost to the ones that get interrupted. And it's stupid that this self-revive skill blocks you from getting the cooldown reduction of the distraction skill, because I don't want to use 2 skill points to get to use it. You know what, I talked about it so much, I figured I should give it a try. So in veteran mode, I stacked the hell out of a vanguard unit. 16 health and 15% max health from the helmet, 45 health from armor, 30 health and 15% damage reduction from the legs. The gun stock gives 25% healing per shot. The sight gives 10% damage reduction. Getting a kill with the bayonet gives 20% damage reduction for 1 turn. Another passive of 25% health gain from shooting. Another passive, when you shoot at someone, they'll deal 10% less damage for that turn. The badass skill, giving the 75% damage reduction for the first shot of every turn. The distraction ability, giving you 50% damage reduction from one chosen enemy. And regenerate, which gives you 15% health every turn. So from base health of, I think, 500 or 550, I'm not really sure what it is. I think it's 550 to around 680. That's a substantial increase, so I was already wrong about the 95. But let's see if this saves their life. Without shooting anyone, they get 75, then 10, then 15% damage reduction. Adding that up makes it 100% damage reduction, but that would be too easy, and math definitely does not work that way. So it must be applied after each other, meaning you divide by each difference of damage reduction. So I ran into a Grenadier to just test how much damage their Nasher does, and with all the reductions, they do 450 damage, meaning their initial damage done is roughly 2,350 damage, enough to one-shot any unit you have if you don't have these stacks of damage reduction on. Even just a badass 75% damage reduction wouldn't save you from dying to a blast, but probably could save you from a hammer burst or a wretch attack, which I think is roughly 400 damage, so that would go down to about 75. I then let the zealots shoot me, twice even, and they either missed or just did 0 damage for both shots. I assume that they missed because it would normally say it did 0 damage down at the bottom here, and with how the math seems to work, I don't think 0 damage is possible. Even if they did only 100 damage, it would still be reduced to roughly 20, so maybe they just missed. So I guess I just proved myself extremely wrong here, and honestly I'm glad I did. You can really face tank a lot of shit if you eat a Nasher shot and can heal almost all of your health in just 1 turn by getting 50% health back from damage dealt, and then healing per turn 15% on top of that. Now that's insane. So I stand corrected. You can use that path, and I used it for the next mission as well because I think I found it more engaging than waiting for enemies to get near and then use Intimidate. I'll correct myself even further. Waiting for enemies to get within 10 meters of you on Insane seems to be more of a death sentence than sending your vanguard into the fire to be the bullet sponge of the team, since they can just heal themselves. It would be nice to have all those debuffs on and then use the rage ability, but you're gonna have to level your vanguard up pretty high to get all those abilities at once. But I bet it's overpowered once you do. I'm just not gonna be doing that. I think you have to be level 8 to even get that. This still means you have to put yourself in danger most of the time playing as vanguard just to make use of the cooldowns you have, which is still very risky on Insane. Just because you can eat a Nasher shot doesn't mean you can eat a Nasher, Torque Bow, and Hammer Burst shot in 1 round. But they are tanks, so this is their job. Just know what you're doing. However, the Paladin path is still quite useless because it predicates on the fact that your other units will also be getting shot at and somehow living through it, which, as I've said an annoying amount of times already, that is impossible. Down but not out doesn't even exist on this mode, so why bother? I still would love to see a better skill tree for Vanguard and support that doesn't just lock you in 1 or 2 out of the 4 paths for the hardest mode in the game. Jack is kind of the same way. I never bothered with wanting to protect my team with a shield or extra health because they would die regardless of the boost, just because of how powerful enemy shots are on Insane. The other classes could do what they wanted for the most part, but I felt like at least
release on Insane, you were more pigeonholed into a couple paths to maximize your damage and minimize your chances of getting fucked on any turn. This is why I think adding another class would really benefit this, make it more dynamic and free up more options to play how you want to. I think Jack was fun in the extra mode, and I bet he's even more fun on difficulties under Insane. But all in all, this game was pretty damn fun, even with its frustrations, and again, I certainly recommend this to anyone that's a fan of Gears or a fan of turn-based games in general. It really tests your ability to assess a situation and adapt to a lot of the ever-changing bullshit that the game throws at you, like changing map layouts, even if they start to look the same after a few missions. The story might bore the hell out of you, as there were a lot of story missions, but still regular old missions, just the name of the objective is different, but you're still doing the same things. And this can get real repetitive, but if you can get past that, I bet you're gonna have a good time. I'm still gonna be coming back to play this game from time to time, just because I enjoy the gameplay, and I still want to experiment with some more playstyles than just what I've talked about so far. I certainly wouldn't care to go through the story again. It would be cool to redo boss fights though, like having a Brumok pop up again in the veteran missions. That would be really awesome. But hey, thanks again for making it this far. Again, I really appreciate you tuning in and listening to me yap about this bullshit. It's fun for me, and it's got to be somewhat fun for you if you consistently get these far in these videos, so go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. It doesn't even cost anything.
I guess this is the end of the Gears series until E-Day, huh? Didn't realize it had already been 3 years now. It's really insane, but also awesome. I'm super grateful to each of you who have been here since then and who will continue tuning in the future. Much love to all 4,000 and hopefully more of you. For the series I'll be doing next, well, just be sure to stick around till the end to find out. But again, love you all. Till next time, peace out.